Okay, guys, so I'm going to be giving you a timeline breakdown of the Madeline Soto case because I know that this case can get super confusing if you haven't been following from the start. So I'm just going to conceptualize this video into a pretty easy to digest timeline. So we start off with February 25th of 2024, this year. Madeline Soto had her birthday party that day, her 13th birthday party. It was a Sunday. And she had about 2 friends in attendance and her family. It was at her grandparents' house, but her mother, Jen Soto, was not present. She was doing a training. She was at work, said she couldn't get off for her daughter's 13th birthday party. And then Stephen Stearns, this guy right here, Jen's boyfriend, didn't show up to the party until after. It was already over. So later that night, they went home. It's getting late. It's time for Madeline to go to bed. She's got school the next day. So Jen Soto is like, Madeline, do me a favor and go bring Stefan into the guest room and go to sleep there. Yeah, that's already our first red flag, okay? So that's right. You heard it. This woman asked her 13-year-old daughter to go sleep with her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Stephen Stearns. So, yeah. To sum that up, Jen has a condo and she rents out rooms in that condo to friends or whoever. And Stefan had rented out a room from there, but basically Jen also stated that all 3 of them would sleep in a bed together pretty routinely or regularly. But that night, Jen was super tired from work and she just needed a good night's sleep. So she sent her 13-year-old daughter to go to bed with him. The next morning, February 26th, Monday morning, Stefan would tell Jennifer that he dropped her daughter off near school early in the morning. They got there a little bit early and she was kind of like, well, why did you drop her off so early? And he said, oh, well, I don't know. We just got out of the house early. I thought she was going to want McDonald's, but she changed her mind. So I just dropped her off. And he dropped her off near this church. So not at school, but near school. And he said that was kind of the last he saw of her. She was rummaging through her backpack for something at first, and then she continued on her way. Stefan would also tell Jennifer that he left his phone at home, and apparently Madeline left her phone too. That same day, Jen went to go pick up Madeline once school was over, as she normally did, but Madeline never came out of the school. So Jen called Madeline's best friend and was like, hey, have you seen Maddie? Where is she? She didn't come out of school yet. And they were like, Maddie never came to school today, like at all. So Jen's like, what the hell? So she calls the school and the school tells her the same thing, that Madeline never came to school that day. So I guess Jen goes home, and around 4 o'clock, I've heard, that's when Jennifer's friends or people who lived in the condo with her called 911 to report Madeline missing. A formal missing persons report was filed with the police department at 8 o'clock that night. A search party began. The cops were looking. Madeline's friends were looking. Stephen Stearns was helping police look, and so on and so forth, but no sign of Madeline that evening. The following day, on February 27th, is when Jen and Stefan did multiple interviews for local media outlets, and their interviews were kind of strange. Jen can be seen in one interview kind of like bouncing a little bit and seeming like worried or concerned, maybe anxiety. Not completely sure what that's about, but that's how she was acting. And then when Stefan got onto the interview, he was weeping, like tears coming out of his eyes, the whole 9. But Jen wasn't. Jen just seemed, I guess, nervous. When Jen was being interviewed, she said that we dropped Madeline off at school. Like, that's what she told the person who's interviewing her, the news reporter. And that was weird because that wasn't the case. Later, she backtracked in the interview and said, oh, I didn't drop Madeline off. My partner did, referring to Stephen Stearns. She also seemed a little worried and even told the interviewer she didn't know what she was allowed to say, and they encouraged her, anything that you think is helpful, you can say, to finding Madeline. Jen went on to tell the reporter that police saw surveillance footage of Madeline hanging out in the parking lot and then walking in the direction towards school, which we'd later find out that no, police never said that. That never happened. Jen went on to tell the reporter that Madeline left her cell phone at home that day, and that was something she did kind of frequently because apparently Madeline had ADHD and was forgetful. And in one of the interviews, she said something strange too. She was just like, we want her back, whatever that means. Like, so are you alluding to the fact that she might be dead already, even though it's just missing? Because, Jen Soto's parents, when they did an interview, they were just saying how they wanted the child back alive, like emphasis on alive, which is kind of a normal reaction. But to say we want her back, whatever that looks like, it's a little bizarre, threw people off. And in one of the interviews, Jen is speaking to the reporter and Stefan is just kind of like hovering there, like just looming over her. All in all, it's very off-putting. You could go find those interviews on YouTube. In Stefan's portion of one of the interviews, he explained to the reporters basically the same thing, what he did that morning, that she was asleep on the way to being dropped off, like she was really tired in the car. And, he woke her up and asked her again if she wanted McDonald's, and she was like, no. She got out of the car and then headed towards school. So Stefan was like, I feel responsible. I feel guilty. Maybe I shouldn't have dropped her off so early. I should have waited, but I just wanted to get on with my day. And he also told the reporters about like this surveillance footage that supposedly law enforcement had, and said the same thing, that they saw Madeline was waiting in the parking lot and then headed towards school. That wasn't true. On February 28th, the sheriff's department has a press conference, and the sheriff even says, like, why was she dropped off away from school? Like, why wasn't she dropped off at school? And he alluded to the whole fact that, yeah, maybe she was embarrassed about the car Stefan was driving or whatever, and, at her age, yeah, maybe that's what she wanted, but no, like, why wasn't she dropped off at the school? And he said that that was something they were going to continue looking into. And sure enough, around 9:52 p.m. that evening, Stefan Stearns is arrested on unrelated charges. So let me read you this one. Stefan Stearns is arrested on unrelated charges. Police discovered disturbing images when they forensically examined Stefan's phone. A review of the phone's date revealed attempts to delete evidence. Stefan previously told law enforcement that he accidentally did a factory reset on his phone. The images were criminal and sexual in nature. The crimes were committed in the Soto family home, and Stefan immediately became the prime suspect in Madeline's disappearance. And get ready, kids, because here's the kicker. Right after that, Jennifer Soto texted Christopher Stern, which is Stefan's father, and she was like, hey, you might want to get a lawyer for your son. He was just arrested, and they found these really illegal photos on your son's phone. So she's tipping them off. Like, would you do that if all of a sudden this man's named as the prime suspect in your daughter's disappearance? Like, what? And the photos were taken in your home? Removed. On March 1st, things really kick off. So law enforcement go to Jen Soto and tell her, we think your daughter's dead. She's likely dead, and it's because of Stefan Stearns. And they also have a press conference that evening, and I'll read you this. The sheriff met with Jennifer Soto to tell her that they were confident that Madeline was dead, even though they were yet to find her. Madeline was never dropped off on February 26th. Instead, she was likely already dead, and Stefan Stearns moved her body in the early morning hours. They had video of Stefan Stearns discarding items in the garbage or dumpster. Law enforcement found Madeline Soto's laptop and belongings in the dumpster. And at 8:19 a.m., they have evidence showing Stefan Stearns returning to the condominium complex, and Madeline Soto is visible in the car and likely dead at that time. Her mouth was hanging ajar and she was slumped over. So, yeah, not good. Later that day, around 4:30 p.m., police located Madeline's body after getting a tip from a man who saw Stefan Stearns, or a person who looked like Stefan Stearns, changing his tire on the side of the road. And sure enough, in that wooded area, behind a locked barbed wire fence, mind you, they found Madeline's body. So yeah, which also means he had to dump Madeline over the fence to get her to that location. Had to dump her body over. Absolutely horrifying. By March 5th, police noticed more and more that Jen's initial timeline is not lining up with what they know. She mentioned to interviewers, like media outlets, that she last saw her daughter the night before her disappearance and she said goodnight, but she told law enforcement she saw her daughter getting dressed and getting ready for school the morning she disappeared. By March 12th, Stefan Stearns faced 60 new charges in the Madeline Soto case. The charges are too graphic in nature for me to even mention here on TikTok, so you can easily Google them and find that information. The charges are disturbing. Police really started questioning Jen Soto, which I cover some of the interviews that were recently released to the public between law enforcement and Jen Soto, so go take a look at that. It's crazy how detached and removed this woman seems. So yeah, that's a really small timeline. I'm going to go over what Stefan Stearns really did in my next video.